2021 was a great year because we did break the $1 million revenue mark. And the unique thing about that for me specifically was I was working a full-time job up until June of 2021.
Wow.
So for any listeners out there, moonlighting a job and doing something full-time, it is possible.
Today's interview is brought to you by Jobber. Welcome to another episode of the UpFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex Freeman, and today we're discussing how to start a fencing business with Mo Zaban. Mo started My Fence Co. in Lakeland, Florida just before the pandemic started, and today he's on track to make $2 million this year. Mo's business is super busy, and he has overcome challenges like how to give accurate time estimates and how to hire and retain productive employees. These are especially impressive given most businesses are struggling with those challenges. Today, he's going to share his strategies to start a fence company, how he creates estimates and hiring tips, and answer some UpFlip subscriber questions. Get ready to learn how to accelerate your growth in the fence building business. To get things started, Mo, thanks for joining us.
This is awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
To get us kickstarted here, what is your background in the construction industry, and what made you decide to start a fence company?
So my background in construction is short but jam-packed. I started with a company here in town that constructed walls along the interstate. So that was my first experience with construction. And shortly after a couple of years of doing that, I kept getting asked from customers and friends and family, hey, do you do fence? Well, you're doing the 24-foot high, tall concrete wall down the highway. Can you do my little 6-foot fence in the back? And after so many no's, I started turning those into yeses, and that's kind of what got me started in the fence business.
Incredible. What were those initial startup costs for My Fence Company, and how did you maybe finance those initial expenses?
Yeah. So through just saving over time, those 3 years that I worked under that larger construction company, consistently saving, knowing that at some point we're going to kick off some business. I wasn't sure what it was going to be, but I wanted to have a good starting point to where we could cash flow the business in the beginning, buying materials, storage, equipment. So it was really saving during those 3 years and trying to put together at least a good starting point to kick everything off.
And what are those must-have pieces of equipment for a fencing company?
So for a fencing company for residential, you need just other than the basic tools, there's some specialty digging equipment that you need to make yourself most efficient other than just using post hole diggers. There's anywhere between the one-man augers that you can buy for a couple $100, or you can go all the way up to what we just purchased here this week, brought on a skid steer that's upwards of $30,000. So depending on how fast you'd like your crews to go and how much production you'd like to do will dictate what kind of equipment you use on a day-to-day basis.
Where do you source for that kind of equipment?
Locally here in Central Florida, there's great dealers around us here. It's kind of a hotspot for construction. So what you do is you reach out to local dealers and you don't have to go far. Within about 30 minutes to an hour, you can usually find great resources to help you pick the right machine for what you need specifically to do.
Should a new owner be budgeting specifically to buy gear right from the start, or is there maybe rentals to get them through certain jobs? Is there a way to not have as large of a cash outlay at the beginning?
For sure, yeah. So most fence companies will start in the residential space. It's the softest on-ramp to getting started, which requires little capital, little investment in equipment, and allows you to get started right away. So most fence companies will start out in residential, and then they can rent equipment as needed for tougher jobs, tougher digging, to kind of help them get by until they figure out, that they need a larger piece of equipment to be able to run efficiently. But the good thing about the fence company and a lot of trades is when you're first starting out in residential, it doesn't require that much capital, which is a kind of a low barrier to entry. So it kind of helps a lot of folks out getting started.
What was that total revenue in 2021 for you?
So 2021 was a great year because we did break the $1 million revenue mark. So we were just over $1 million in revenue. And the unique thing about that for me specifically was I was working a full-time job up until June of 2021.
Wow.
So for any listeners out there, moonlighting a job and doing something full-time, it is possible. It takes tremendous amount of extra hours to get off the ground. But for anyone out there listening that's starting something while working full-time for someone else, it's definitely possible, but it does hurt for a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, lots of follow-up questions to that kind of process. But first, I want to ask, hitting 7 figures in that first full year as a business is really, really impressive. And so how did you set yourself up for those kind of sales right away?
So online Google My Business has been the biggest key point to us getting known in our community. So to anyone getting started, if you're avoiding setting up your Google My Business or enhancifying that and making that be the face of your company, you're really missing out on a huge portion of your local area. I think Google's done a great job of kind of getting ads figured out and paid ads and things like that, which can work. But for us, getting a good Google My Business review rating, that has been one of the most key factors in getting our phone to ring. So that was a huge factor in the first year, especially last year.
Can you just briefly explain kind of what Google My Business is and then maybe how you went about enhancing your listing there?
For sure. Google My Business is for any home service or trade or any business that you can list through Google, and you can verify your address, what you do as a service. But the best part about that, it's free. You put your business on there and you constantly do good work in your area. And the biggest thing that you can shoot for and try to get are good reviews. So it's a free Google, it's a free business listing. Anyone can do it. And it just takes commitment to reviews and uploading pictures and everything about your business. You have to get attention. The biggest thing that we learned last year, the biggest advice I can give to anybody is you have to get attention. Without attention, you can't make sales, you can't do anything. So Google My Business gives, it lets you get attention in your local space. Definitely something to get right for any business starting up.
I'm definitely going to come back to that initial process of getting attention. But before we move from that, I want to talk a little bit about moonlighting, having a full-time job and building this kind of business. What was your day-to-day like during that phase of life for you and the business?
Yeah. So for the first 6 months of last year, you can imagine. So the business started in 2020, beginning of 2021. Those first 6 months was where I was kind of feeling the pressure more than ever. We'd gotten busy enough to where we're getting calls every day. My wife and I were tag teaming the calls. She would answer calls while she was at home, and I was working. I try to field some here and there, but ultimately my wife played a huge factor in being able to screen some calls coming in. But the pressure was on. It was kind of like, we can see the point there where we can take this thing full time, but the pressure was definitely on. So a typical day to day would probably be start work at 7, my full-time job, finish for about 4 or 5 o'clock. I would do one estimate a day at 5 or 5:30. That's the only time that I can meet with customers. And from one estimate a day, we try to do virtual estimating. We had to figure out how I can be in multiple places at once. So virtual estimating, using tools online to pull up properties and do an estimate without having to go to a customer's home was huge. You can bid a job just using online aerial tools. And that was a big, a pivoting moment to where we can bid work without actually physically having to be there because I couldn't. I was working all day, so we had to find a way around that, and we did. And then it was quoting all night, and working on business setup things and all the way up until midnight. So that was the fun part.
Yeah. Then what were you doing to manage that workflow in those first few months, and how has that impacted how you manage workflow now?
You just have to do it effectively. You just have to do the basics brilliantly. I mean, you just have to be able to figure out what are the basics I need to do and how do I do them better than anyone, and not get too caught up in things that a $5 million company would think about, or $10 million company. You really need to answer your phone, get back to customers quickly, provide as much value as you can. I mean, just do the basics correct, and you'll succeed more than 90% of people that kind of get ahead of themselves. So just doing the basics perfectly in the beginning, and not try not to get too overwhelmed. It does get hard because you want to think about 100 different things, but you got to bring it back down to basics and do those well.
Shifting away from maybe your individual day-to-day on that in those first few months, but in the beginning of the business, how did you build your company's brand identity?
We wanted to build a brand identity that resonated with customers. So the biggest thing that we kept thinking about was, what was the biggest problem in construction? I saw it on my end in the commercial space. It was, commercial or a contractor comes out, gives an initial promise of, we're going to be here on this day, we're going to provide all these things, and then somehow during the process it falls apart, or there's always a back and forth between a contractor and a client. So we said early on, one of the biggest things that we're going to offer is being on the customer's team throughout the whole process. We tell that to all our customers. We are on your team from start to finish. So we wanted the brand to be personable. We wanted to be obviously simple. I didn't want to go with the traditional last name, company, naming of the company. So my fence company, when a customer says that, I want them to feel like it's their fence company. So, when they're saying the name, I want them to kind of understand that we're on their team, we're their fence company. And that's how we kind of share value. So that was the brand identity, making it personable and just having something super simple.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced in the first year of the business, and how did you overcome it?
A few challenges that we faced in the first year, starting it in 2020, in February, March of 2020, what was the big obvious? COVID hit, no one knew what to do. During that time, I'm working a full-time job. So we had little capital, little attention to the business. I couldn't commit to it full-time because I had a full-time job. So, think about that, not giving it enough time, not giving it enough capital during a COVID year. So we had a lot of struggles getting off the ground. The good thing about how we started was we had time. There was no immediate pressure, like maybe some businesses face who are doing it full time. I had a full time job, and this was kind of, we can take our time to make sure we did it right. But the biggest thing was just handling expectations from customers as we started to get more and more calls in that first year was pretty difficult, because that was our promise. We're going to be on your team. But then it was a struggle to do that with the time being, so restrictive. But that was kind of one of the biggest struggles, just giving enough time to the business to where people felt taken care of and listened and gotten updates with it. It was a big struggle for, especially being a small company with one or two people, me and my wife.
Bringing things now kind of more into the present day, what are your typical profit margins?
On our typical projects, our margins are anywhere between 20, 25 to 30% on a project. So we are maybe a little bit on the higher end, as it kind of where we find ourselves, which is planned. It's not by accident. We don't want to just be the cheapest contractor. We want to be able to do things that cost money, but also offer value to customers. So typical project profit margins between 20 and 30% on residential projects.
Are there some types of projects that have better margins?
The more unique projects do, if you get into specialty fence styles, or you're getting into DOT state work, or anything that has to do with high spec projects, there tend to be a few less players in that market. There's a lot of solar farms going around or coming up in Central Florida, and those require a huge amount of capital, which so you kind of, you don't have as many players there. So there tends to be a little bit better profit margins there. More risk, but more reward by that same note.
And then, if someone was wanting to start a fencing company, what skills or experience are crucial for them to have? And is there a specific way that someone who's new to the industry should or could go about building those skills?
If you are starting in the fencing industry and you have little to no experience with fencing, the one thing I can say that's been a recent thing is plugging into fencing groups, whether that be on Facebook or whether that be online. Just recently, there's just been a boom of trade professionals that gather, share ideas, share knowledge, and give tips and tricks. But plugging into one of those groups, or reaching out to an organization, maybe like the American Fence Association, the AFA, they have a lot of training videos and stuff like that, to where you can ramp up pretty quick while learning the right way. So I think plugging in, even reaching out to who you think may be a competitor in the area. A lot of them, may be willing to share some tips and tricks with you, but it's just plugging into the community and asking for advice, and people are more than willing to share. But just plug in and try to learn from people who have been doing it, much longer. That way you can, maybe not make as many mistakes as we've all made, but but just plugging into groups is crucial for anyone starting out.
And then you work with both commercial and residential clients. Can you talk about the difference between those two types of clients?
On the residential side, we'll find that we're able to connect with customers a whole lot more. It's a way more personal connection or an emotional buy compared to a commercial project. So in residential, we're going to get to know the homeowner personally. We call our meetings meet and measure. So we're going to get a chance to meet you. You can meet us. We're going to measure your yard. We're going to figure out what the best solution is. You really get to dig into the details of why this customer is needing a fence, whether that's a dog or a personal reason of privacy. So you're really getting to know someone personally, which kind of helps the value part of it, where you can, you don't have to be the cheapest person, but you just have to give the best value. And they'll go with you. On the commercial side, it's a little bit difficult to engage with buyers to figure out what their needs are. Most of them are bidding per price, or per, there's really, the bottom line, kind of atmosphere, to where you have to be very, very efficient at what you do. And it's just a little bit harder to kind of connect and build a relationship. There are times where you can, but it's just a little bit more of a of a transactional relationship instead of like an emotional relationship with residential.
And then can you talk briefly as well about the types of fencing installations that you do? Are there particular services that are the most popular and or the most profitable?
Sure, sure. So the big four, vinyl, aluminum, chain link, and wood, are the four types of fence styles that we offer. But 90% of what we sell is 6 foot high white vinyl PVC in here in our market in Central Florida. A lot of HOAs have adopted this fence style because of low maintenance, ease of install. It looks good on both sides. So 6 foot high white vinyl is probably the most popular, and that's what we sell the majority of. So that's kind of what we focus on selling. If we had to paint a picture of our ideal customer, our avatar, it would be a new residential home build needing 6 foot high white vinyl fence, somewhere around 200 feet. We can get that done in a day, and so that would be our ideal customer. But that would be the highest selling product would be the 6 foot high white vinyl fencing, PVC fence.
And where do you get those supplies, the building supplies that you do? Who are your suppliers? How do you vet a supplier?
So one of the biggest things I ask suppliers, other than your normal asking for pricing and what you have available, which is all common questions that you ask a vendor and a supplier. One question that we ask specifically that we kind of some vendors get caught off guard is we're trying to almost interview them as how they can be a good supplier for us by asking what's your lead time and how much can you get me for this, and but really asking them, hey, how can I be a great customer to you? What's your ideal customer? So a supplier for us is someone who buys directly from a manufacturer, routes and fabricates the fencing, and sells it directly to us. So it doesn't make sense for us to go to a manufacturer. We're not that big to order in multiple truckloads of blank material. So our preferred suppliers are companies who buy from manufacturers but fabricate, route the holes and post, and then we would buy directly from them. So we're close to the source, but not dealing directly with the actual extruder. But really, vetting a vendor is like, I want to make sure you're a good fit for us, but I also want to make sure I'm a good fit for you. I want to make sure I'm your ideal customer. That way I don't have to feel like less than, or I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, essentially.
Hey guys, Alex here from the UpFlip team. We at UpFlip love helping business owners achieve their goals. That's why we're so excited to partner with Jobber. More than 160,000 service professionals use Jobber every day to manage their business on the go. Jobber helps you keep things organized and provide an easy and professional customer experience. Estimate, quote, schedule, invoice, and get paid all in one place. Send quotes using customized templates that clients can approve online in their 24/7 self-service portal client hub. Then convert the quote to a booking. Once the job's done, convert the quote into an invoice and collect payment all from the Jobber app. Keep clients informed with appointment reminders and automatic follow-up messages. It even helps you manage your team and provide documentation to clients. Create schedules in the app, share them with the team, and provide them the forms and checklists they need to get the job done right every time. Jobber really makes life easier. They even offer small business grants to help you achieve your business goals. This year, they are awarding 25 grants totaling $150,000. Sign up with Jobber and get a 14-day free trial. Just go to getjobber.com/upflip to explore what Jobber can do for you. Earlier, you mentioned Google My Business has been, one of your primary marketing tools. What other advertising and marketing are you utilizing?
So another thing through Google that we've done recently is get Google guaranteed. There's a thing recently that Google's done. They're calling them LSA ads, so local service ads, that we've jumped into, and we are now the only Google guaranteed fence contractor in Central Florida. So what that service is, that's a paid ad. So you pay for those ads that come in. But what Google does as a company, they will vet you. As a company, they'll do background checks with you. They'll have you submit their insurance and their license. So there's a whole list of things that they check in order to give you the Google guaranteed badge, because they want to make sure that you're lining up directly with the consumer. So we've recently done Google guaranteed or Google Ads LSA, and we're a Google guaranteed company now. Which, to all that being said, what that really means is if there's a problem with the project, the homeowner can submit a claim to Google, and Google will pay out up to $2,000 for any claim that, if we didn't do something right, or, somehow something wrong happened with the project. It really just gives more peace of mind to the consumer. So instead of just regular Google ads that the consumer doesn't get any protection from, Google Guaranteed ensures that you're working with a good company that's been vetted, been background checked, and again, further aligns the customer's needs with the company's services.
Have you tried any marketing approaches that haven't worked for you?
I have. I have tried Facebook advertising. We thought it was good because of all the tools that you can align, yourself with, and how the demographic you can pick. But for some reason, it did not work well. It really seemed to be kind of maybe the easy thing to try, but we just didn't find much success with that. So we were kind of just sticking with Google My Business organically, and now we've been trying the LSAs over the past month or so.
And so many of these things seem dependent on great reviews from your current customers. So, what does exceptional customer service mean to you, and how are you providing that experience for your customers that they want to then give you that review that will help you bring in the next customer?
I think whenever you're first meeting with the customer, you're setting an initial promise. All the things that you're first saying to the customer about your service, about what you're going to do, you're really setting an expectation. The follow through is where everything kind of falls apart. For most companies, something gets missed, something gets miscommunicated. So the thing that we share with customers, on top of what I mentioned earlier about being on their team, we're going to communicate, we're going to consult, and we're going to coordinate with you. And that's just the process that we have. We know we've done it enough times to know what a successful project looks like. We also know what an unsuccessful project looks like, and we're trying to avoid that at all costs. So I know what a successful project looks like in terms of communication, letting them know what's going on, reminding them that this is being taken care of, letting them know certain checkpoints that we passed, keeping them in the loop all the way through completion, and just hearing them out. Just figuring out what they need, but really delivering on the initial promise of customer satisfaction all the way through the end of an install. It really means a lot to customers.
Do you then include at the conclusion of the project an ask for them to go leave that review? And if so, what does that ask look like?
Sure, yeah. So at the end of a project, after we make sure everything is delivered properly, they're happy with it, I send out a text or during my follow up call, and I just say, hey, I have a big favor to ask of you. It takes about a minute of your time, but I would love it if you would leave us a Google review. It really helps us out with our future customers to show them our past work. We are always shooting for 5 stars, so I hope we delivered that to you. If not, please let me know what we can do to give you 5-star service, because we really want to make sure we're delivering on that promise. So yeah, at the end of every project, that ask does get given to the customer, because we definitely we fight for that review. We really do. So we want to make sure we get it at the end of it. And we're almost to 100 reviews so far, and in our market, it's kind of one of the on the higher end. There, you don't see too many triple digit fence company reviews. So we're there. We're almost there.
Yeah, that's great. How many employees do you have right now?
So we have one full-time project manager that we just hired on a few weeks ago, and then we have one crew of 3 installers that work in the field doing install work. So a total of 4.
How are you finding that high quality talent for your fencing company?
Typically, if you're not in the industry and you're just starting from scratch, you don't know anyone, a good place to start would be your supplier. So whoever you're buying materials from, these suppliers there's multiple installers or tradesmen that work with the supplier, whether that be a subcontractor or someone looking for full-time work. If you connect with your supplier and you ask them, hey, do you know anyone looking for work? They may have heard of someone that just left a team that was maybe too far away. There was too much driving, and now you're closer. So you can interview that person. So connecting with your supplier may be a good starting point, other than, traditionally going through Indeed and posting up, a job ad, specifying what you need. Maybe reach out to the supplier, who you're already buying materials from. Maybe a good starting point.
Have you been challenged to hire people in the last 2 years?
We've been real fortunate. We've been real fortunate. We haven't had much of a struggle. In the beginning, we did, just because we didn't have enough full-time work to keep someone busy, which is a struggle in the beginning. Again, we were real fortunate to find good guys that were experienced and had experience, but we paid them really well to keep them on board. But so we haven't had the challenges yet, but that doesn't mean they're not right around the corner. This year, we're hoping to grow and tremendously, and I know that's going to mean bringing on more team members. So training and figuring out who the right fit is definitely. I see that being a challenge here pretty soon. Sometimes you maybe get fortunate or lucky with the first few, but as you grow, you're going to probably run into a lot of those problems.
Yeah. Are there any efficiencies of scale that can be achieved for a fencing company or just a company in the construction industry? Or is it really, as you add more business, you are just inevitably adding more people?
It's good. So I've heard the term recently of good unit level economics. I was reading an article about a big fence company that was recently sold, and there's good unit level economics in the fencing business. If you can make it work on a small scale, you can probably make it work on a bigger scale. Not massive. You need to change it for, if you're going to be one of the top 10 in the country or 20. But if you can figure out your process with one crew, with one job a day, if you can figure that out, it's usually repeatable. That's the good thing about it. It's the same footage, the same install, the same methods. If you can perfect that, you can double, triple, quadruple, and it's going to be the same process over and over. You don't have to change too much when you're going from $1 million to $2 million in sales. You may have to hire some key roles, but the very base core of the business does not change. But you need to do the basics brilliantly before you go doubling and tripling, because then you're just doubling, tripling your problems if you don't have stuff figured out in the beginning.
Have you learned any business owning hacks or tricks that you could share with our listeners of, the best way to one, grow the business or even just operate the business on a daily basis?
Just being mindful, just of what's going on around you, thinking in the future of what's to come. Don't think about just the right now and what's in front of you. I know it's hard to do that in the beginning because you have tasks right there in front of you that you need to do, but you really need to try to focus on what your business is going to look like in 1, 3, 5 years. That way you can make those changes, whether that's hiring team members, changing your advertising. So working on your business, not in your business. I mean, I know that's a pretty popular, phrase, but, don't be out there digging holes and setting every job. You need to be pulled back, looking at it from a different lens and working on your business instead of directly in your business.
How would you describe your style as a leader?
I believe my style so far has been pragmatic, because there's so many, because we're relatively new, there's not a whole lot of times where I say, this is how we've always done it, so we have to do it this way. So a lot of what I'm figuring out about my leadership style is if you can make it work and something works for you, as long as it fits in our general, promise to the customer, I'm all for it. There's no way we've always done it. So that's an advantage that we have that a lot of new companies need to realize is, you can set your own pace. You can make things happen the way you want. But so that would be more my leadership style is pragmatic. And if it works, if it's part of our, if customers are happy from it and we're happy and it works, hey, I'm all for it.
Why is that style particularly effective in the construction industry, do you think?
I think because you have to be able to handle change. I mean, there's change on every single project and constant change as you grow and just with things going on and evolving. If you're stiff and you're not allowed and you're not able to pivot and change, there's a whole lot of problems you can run into to that. But being pragmatic and figuring out and letting your team members have the freedom to make decisions moves you out of that decision making role, and it lets them have more power to make decisions on your behalf or just make decisions on a project. Not everything has to pass through you essentially to get done. So you're allowing your team members to feel that responsibility, and then it helps them grow, helps them make quick decisions that are in line with the company.
What's been the low point for you in running the business? What led to it? How did you get through it?
Man, oh man. I think right now, I wouldn't say it's a low point, but it's just a really, really tough spot. We're in the year between $1 million and $2 million. This is the time in a business to where you have a few team members, maybe not many. You're not $5 million yet. You're not 10, but you don't have enough resources to justify a full team. It's really taking even more time now that as busy as we've gotten to manage all this, especially with family. I have two sons and a wife that, I'd like to give them attention as well. So balancing constraints, I guess, is kind of the biggest thing I can think of right now is, there's constraints everywhere, and I just got to balance who's going to get this and who's going to get how much of that. But I would say right now is a pretty tough point. We're almost like stepping a few steps back, hiring and training to be able to slingshot forward. So it's going to be a pretty tough year, but I'm definitely looking forward to it.
And then any mistakes from the early days of the business, or even the present days of the business, that might have a lesson that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. Ego is not your amigo. So if I had to break that down, ego is not your amigo. When you're interacting with customers, with vendors, with whoever it is, you really have to be on their level. You can't go in there with this. I've done this for so long, I know what's right mentality. No one likes to hear that. So leave your ego at the door. Ego is not your amigo. Don't do that, and just kind of be on the same level with customers. Listen. They want to be heard. And that's probably one of the biggest things I'm kind of, I can kind of give out right now is just, take your time and listen and don't let your ego, get too large. You'll have some success. And that's kind of what's hard to balance. That is, you're going to have all this quick success if you do it right. And it may be very easy to say, hey, I've done this, or, I deserve more credit than you're giving me, or more respect. It's, hey, you're in the service business. You're serving others. The most important thing to your business is the customer you're talking to, so just don't forget that.
To close out the interview, we're going to go to a section that we call our Fan Blitz questions. These come from our YouTube community. So if you're on YouTube, check out UpFlip on YouTube and join the community, and you can pose some questions that we'll bring to future guests on the show. So for these, Mo, just a quick hitter of an answers. Something 1 to 15 words. Don't overthink it. We want that immediate reaction.
There you go.
So Fan Blitz question number 1: what is your favorite business book?
I'm getting into rocket fuel. That's my next book that I'm getting into.
Question number 2: what kind of car do you drive?
Ford F-150.
Number 3: if you could be the CEO of any company you like, which one would you choose?
Tesla.
Great choice. Number 4: what is a bygone fashion trend that you'd like to bring back?
Cargo shorts.
You got to have the pockets. They're so convenient. They're so convenient to have.
My goodness, they're full right now. On me right now.
Final Fan Blitz question here. What is one fact that changed your perspective on life forever?
Fancy fails and simple scales. Do the simple and basic things correctly, and you'll succeed.
I love that. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our Fan Blitz questions. Again, thank you to those that sent in questions. Join the UpFlip community on YouTube, where you can submit those questions for future guests. And that's going to do it for this episode of the UpFlip podcast. Mo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And as always, folks, tune in here every week for more interviews with entrepreneurs that are out there finding success in various fields. Also, check out the UpFlip blog, upflip.com/blog. As mentioned, the UpFlip YouTube channel as well. And we will see you next week on the podcast.